So a big part in how we support repopulation after an evacuation is ensuring that the infrastructure is safe. SDG&E employs a team of fire coordinators. They spent large majority of their career as fire chiefs across the region, and they end up working with the incident commander on a fire, and then when it's safe, we go into the burn area and we assess any damage to the electric system. And then our crews, as soon as it is safe, we go in and start rebuilding the infrastructure and ensure that we can get power back into these areas as quickly and as safely as possible. And then we work closely with the incident commander, reporting back any issues with the infrastructure, and then they use that information when determining repopulation. Our SDG&E fire coordinators will respond to fire camp and work out a lot of the logistics that it takes to rebuild the infrastructure safely. An example of what that could be is even a lot of times rebuilding the electrical infrastructure requires aviation traffic and requires us to get helicopters in the air. So we have to work very closely with the incident commander on any fire incident to ensure that we do that as safely as possible. SDG&E has been incorporating drones and UAVs into how we assess damage following events. We've been doing it on a selective basis. It's something that we incorporate more whenever the opportunity exists. SDG&E's fire coordinators have all become licensed drone operators, and we're seeing more ways of incorporating the UAVs across our restoration operations. In addition to the drones, the surveys would be primarily done ground surveys once it's safe for our crews to move into the area impacted by the fire. Our SDG&E fire coordinators, working closely with the incident command structure at the fire, would make the determination when it is safe for the SDG&E crews to move in and assess any damage to the infrastructure, and then we'd very quickly start restoring that power. We went through this process in 2020 with the Valley Fire, where we had the 17,000 acre fire in San Diego County, which caused significant damage to portions of the infrastructure. We found and learned a couple lessons from this. One was that the pole brushing that is done around the poles was very effective in protecting the poles from the fire. So we found that the poles were more resilient because of pole brushing. We also found places where the electric infrastructure had been hardened and transitioned from wood to steel, so that was able to expedite the process of restoring power and getting people back into the community faster. So SDG&E began an effort to implement system hardening over a decade ago, when it became apparent when we had two one-in-a-century fires happen just 4 years apart. It became very apparent that something was changing and that we needed to address the electric infrastructure. Initially, that effort started with targeting the highest risk pole, meaning the windiest location with the oldest infrastructure. We would target that and try to harden that and make it as resilient to wildfire as possible. And that process continued for years. Over the last several years, it's become more of a focus to try to minimize the impact of public safety power shutoff as well. So now there's a multi-tier effort where it's not only minimize that biggest risk, but also try to decrease the impact that public safety power shutoff is having on the community. What we're finding is that the more we've been collecting information on these Santa Ana winds, the better that we understand the risk. In some places, the winds we found to be so extreme that the best way to minimize the impact of public safety power shutoff on certain communities is ultimately going to be to underground those areas. So that is a tool that's being used strategically to really try to target those highest risk public safety power shutoff communities and minimize the long-term impact of that program. Valley Center, we have found, especially since 2018, we have seen numerous high wind events impact that community. No particular area more than the eastern and southeastern side of the community, from Hellhole Canyon through Paradise Mountain, but then we also see it community-wide through Valley Center. So we've taken lots of steps to address this. We are targeting hardening efforts within Valley Center. We're expanding our community resource center. And then we're working closely with universities to closely study and build better forecasting models so that we can be more fine-tuned with the notifications we give that community to minimize any over-alerting before major events and make sure that we are as precise as we possibly can be with how we anticipate and prepare for these public safety power shutoff events.